And we're live.
Hi. Hi,
Hello.
Fiona.
Hi, how are you?
And this week we have got Fiona Lucas, who is getting up stupidly early from the great continent known as Australia, to join us to talk about online safety, specifically to do with kids. And she is the author of Future Proof Your Kids, which I've created a little QR code for the corner. So if anybody wants to get their phone up and it will hopefully take them to the Amazon store appropriate. So good morning, Fiona. You're our first ever Australian guest.
Oh, am I? I
yes,
feel very privileged. Thank you. And good evening. Is it evening for both of you there?
No, well, Christelle's in San Diego,
Oh,
it's actually a global show now, really global.
Wow.
We're in different time zones, like 8 hours apart-ish or something.
It is.
You're like a day behind me.
Yeah.
I'm already in the future.
So you're Wednesday. Are you?
Yeah.
You're Wednesday right now. Tim is evening Tuesday. I'm 12 noon. So we're lunchtime in San Diego, Pacific time.
You're always a bit behind in the US. So
I'm way behind. That's so fun. Hi, Tim Zone. Tim Zone says hi to all of us.
Hi, yeah, we've got comments.
Hi, Tim. Welcome to... And Tim is from the East Coast, I think. I think he's on the East Coast.
Yes, Pennsylvania, I think.
So
before Fiona falls asleep, because I know it's 5 a.m. your time, and it's coffee. So.
Yes.
Tell us how you got into this whole online safety thing, and why it's important.
Okay. Well, it's part of what I do, but when I first started in social media, it is where I landed. It was basically an observational thing originally. I was very interested in online media. I was working in a school at the time, and I was observing. Actually, it was parents behaving badly initially. Sort of, the arguments in the school ground spilling out onto Facebook. And being blown out of proportion. And then there were a few sites made about teachers, pages made about teachers and things like that, mostly were always very positive and occasionally were not, and it just got me thinking, wow. And this was back in, I suppose, 2011 when I was first getting interested. And I just started looking into it thinking, I think we could be a lot nicer to each other the way we are. There was the whole keyboard warrior thing. And I think because before we had Facebook, we'd had so many different online mediums that you hid behind. You didn't show your face. You didn't use your real name. It was very easy to become a different persona, I guess, for many people. And, in gaming rooms, that sort of thing, I think that still goes on a bit. So it really was just me wanting to try to bring some change into the world in a positive way. So hence the name I Respect Online was. Everything was born around a framework of online reputation. So do I answer all of your question then? No.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
That's brilliant. Fiona, am I saying your name right? Fiona?
Yes, Fiona, yes.
Oh, good. Okay, so I wrote down a little bit about you, and I'm fascinated by each aspect that you do. And so I'm probably going to kind of go down the line because you do quite a bit in cyber world. You are author of Future Proof Your Kids, which we see here. You are an online community strategist and cyber safety expert.
Yeah.
And you mentor, this is absolutely fascinating, you mentor young entrepreneurs in your hometown.
Yeah, that's through an organization that I volunteer to be part of. It's absolutely wonderful. It's called the Upstart Challenge, and they take school-age kids who get together and basically come up with an idea. We put them through, we mentor them. There's a whole group of different people, different aspects. Talk them through to a sort of, some sort of viable initial product, and then they pitch pitched to angel investors. Yeah. So
Wow. Okay.
fabulous. Yeah.
So well, that's absolutely fabulous. And I want to dive into that more. And then you've helped develop a charity that works with domestic financial abuse survivors.
That's just in its fledgling. We were just starting to launch when COVID happened, and it held up a lot of the legals because we need to actually be there and signing stuff in person, and we're in different states, and I'm in the state that no one wants to come to. So we are in the biggest lockdown. My area is not too bad, but I'm only an hour away from Melbourne, and Melbourne's been in stage 4 lockdown for some 13 weeks, I think now.
Wow. Can I ask you, what was your inspiration in helping to develop that charity?
Actually, it's grounded in personal experience. I had a not so great marriage that many years ago, and had that happen to me. So it was something that I discovered when I finally left, that the whole background of my finances was a sham, and there was a whole other thing going on, and it's a bit of a shock. And I have a couple of other ladies that have either been working in finance areas or with women who have had to struggle with various different problems, and we were just talking, and that's kind of came about that we felt it was something that really needs to be addressed. That domestic violence itself has been, more and more talked about. But there's another side to that, and that is the trying to climb back up and out of a pretty, can be left in a pretty deep hole by not your own fault kind of thing. So it's just something that we're trying to get together. And in all times, to be honest, COVID is a perfect time. Probably there's really been, there'll be more people struggling and so many other facets to it. So hopefully we get it off the ground as soon as possible, and start really trying to make a bit of difference there. I also have a background in accounting, so it's, I guess all those sort of things end up fitting together in some way, that you have knowledge that you can take and use in the world in a better way to try to help other people. Yeah.
Wow, that's absolutely fabulous. Will this be worldwide, or is it going to be specific to Australia?
Love it to be worldwide, but I guess baby steps.
I'm pushing you. I know the need quite well, so I'm already pushing you.
Oh, okay. Oh, now interesting. We'll have to have more chat.
Can you come to the US?
Well, all the time. I love the US, but yeah, I don't know when I'm ever going to be allowed out of my cage island at the moment. So it's,
I know I can't leave either. It's quite challenging, but that's a beautiful story. Thank you for sharing.
So, do you know Serena Ryan at all as well? Tim, do you know Serena from?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Okay, yes. So she's one of the ladies that's involved. She does a podcast about getting yourself out of financial hole as well. So
wow. Okay. Very neat. Good. We'll go look at her information too. That's fabulous.
Oh, well, I'll just invite her on the show. That's what
please do, Tim. I want to hear more.
So, well, I build this show as about online safety. So let's go back onto that. What are, let's say, well, I mean, I'm obviously Christelle can give real examples because she has real kids. But what would you say if you were approached by a parent of, well, let's say a 5-year-old, a 10-year-old, and a 15-year-old? What is your first advice to them in terms of like the basics of online security online security, but online behavior that they should be trying to encourage or instill in their kids?
Okay, well, that was broad. All those two. Usually a parent will come to me with a specific issue that they're having. So I guess my main thing always is about open communication. So and age appropriate. So when you've got a mix, that can be more of a challenge, because particularly if you've got a teen, And the teen might be at that point where they're really trying to make the territory. They're sort of resisting a bit of, any parental guidance, and they'll be saying, I don't need you, I can do it myself. But they may be wanting to look at things that are not appropriate for the 5-year-old, and particularly like games. So, if a game has a high level of violence in it, for example, might be something that the teen is able to handle, but it would not be appropriate for the younger kids, particularly the 5-year-old. So those sort of things become more of a challenge for a parent when you've got mixed ages, and it's just about setting boundaries all the time and having those discussions about why it may not be appropriate. And kids have got different levels too of maturity and understanding. Mm-hmm. So I'm not prescriptive in anything that I talk about, because I think you do have to look at each child as an individual. Although the caveat on that is that a really young child just don't have the life experience to really be able to cope with, like first shooter full on games that have a lot of blood and that kind of content and that sort of thing. So, it's about, I guess there's a lot of common sense that comes into it, but it is a challenge for parents today, because there is stuff coming at you from every different aspect of life, and you're trying to judge it. You've got peer pressure on them, and that starts, I think younger and younger, sort of 7, 8, they're definitely going, I want a phone, I want a mobile phone. So it's just, I think, about looking at what each specific area that you're worried about and starting to work on there. I'd probably work on the older one first. I would be making sure the parent had open dialogue with that child, because whatever they do will filter down to the other kids. So I think it's important to start there. But yeah, I can't give you a prescription, because each situation is different. But I have a framework that I do work around, which is the reputation framework, which is based on my 4 R's. So it's about respect for yourself and others. So that covers things from such self is about your selfies and how you're portraying yourself, how much you're giving away online. And respect, obviously, for others is about being mindful of what their rights are, and whether or not they want to be portrayed in a certain way. Then you've got responsibility, and that ties in responsibility for what you are creating, and responsibility for how that may affect somebody else. Resilience comes into it. That's the third part of the framework. And that's so important, because if you are going to be online, we do have to wear a bit of a thicker skin. It's if you're highly sensitive, you have a highly sensitive child, you really need to work more baby steps, because, stuff does come up. Kids can be cruel even without meaning to be. There's bullying, and then there's kids teasing, and it can be a very fine line for when that switches over. But a very sensitive child, will feel that a lot more, and to build some resilience around coping mechanisms for what to do if that should happen is really important. And my last R is research, which is all about, it's basically sorting out that fake news, avoiding the clickbait, and making sure that what you share online is accurate and truthful, which seems to matter more and more these days, and it's actually getting harder and harder for us to do. So
I love that you include building resilience in there, because it's a brilliant way to train our children. Nothing's going to come easy for them, and so for them to learn that resilience as children is quite valuable. I think a quite valuable lifelong lesson. So I like that you include that in there. Could you expand on that a little bit more, the building the resilience? Because even us as adults need to know how to better do that.
Yeah, I think we're getting a massive dose of learning right now through COVID, to be honest. I think, depending where you are in the world, that resilience is often born of stress and trauma and things like that. So, you often find children that are in environments where they are undergoing war and things are actually more resilient than we in the Western world who haven't really had to deal with that sort of stuff, we're kind of cotton wool to a huge degree without even meaning to be. So, and you're seeing that really now because, we lose some of our freedoms and comforts, and it's really affecting some people badly, So trying to build that kind of resilience. I think for me, I was lucky that I had a dad. I was actually quite ill a lot as a child and had to be homeschooled a lot, which led me, I guess bullying was always something that I was aware of because I was often feeling like I was a new kid because I'd be away for so long, turned back up at school. And my dad used to have a way of, sort of saying to me, you're just like a tree in the wind. The wind can really blow and your branches might bend right over sometimes. Sometimes you might even lose one. But he said, then the rest of you stays strong in that wind. And I think, I've always carried that with me, in that I felt like, you just bend when you have to, and you've got to build in to your children to allow themselves to sometimes be upset, to we've got to feel, and part of that feeling that helps us to grow, but it's not taking it to where you're dwelling in this sadness or upset or whatever it is, but that you take it on, look at it for what it is, are able to sort of discuss, hey, this is why you're feeling like that, and these are the things that can cause it. And if you start that while they're young, you can build that resilience. It starts from the first time you fall over and hurt your knee, that kind of thing. I think it's we always want to just wrap them up, and give them kisses and say it's going to be okay. But you also know that if you just sort of go, brush it off, you're okay. If it's obviously not a broken leg or something, if they brush it off they go and they've forgotten about it in 10 seconds, So we kind of have to keep teaching ourselves to be able to brush things off where we can and keep it in perspective. And this perspective scale is something I have in my book I talk about, because that can help when you're speaking with children or even yourself with adults, to look at the catastrophe scale kind of thing and say, okay, I'm feeling like this, but let's just talk about, with your child, okay, so we're here. Where else could we be? Well, we're lucky it's not this, right? You didn't break your leg, you've grazed it. And you can take it down into where it's sort of that catastrophe and draw little monsters and things like that and make them bigger and smaller if they're very young children, and sort of say, okay, well, this is just a little one. It's not a big one. And you can, by kind of putting things into a different perspective, I think that helps with growing the resilience around things that confront you, because you can take that analogy as they grow through about, okay, we've got a big monster here now, but we're going to deal with it, as other problems arise, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So, given my hopelessly broad question last time, I might as well ask another one. What is the most common issue that parents come to you with, that you haven't, well, not an easy fix, but you can really help them with resolving?
It's always has to be done within the family. It's usually bullying, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's either online bullying or they've seen something that they shouldn't. I think a common one is kids coming across pornography and that kind of thing. And that has to start with a whole family approach. It's really important, to have separate logins for kids so that they're not accessing. A lot of the time, the first time a kid's come across porn is because they've jumped onto the computer and an adult's been on there before. And sometimes even that adult may have looked at some more adult content as well. And, of course, good old Google and YouTube remember what you last looked at and tend to throw things up. So it can be accidental. One of the things that I have always said is to when your child's young in the computer, have that computer near you. Don't have them in their own room. That's a privilege that they can work towards as they get older and have developed those strengths around the framework, the 4Rs, and demonstrate their responsibility with it, and that you can feel comfortable that, you know, if they do want some privacy, because privacy is important and trusting our kids is important, but it's an earned thing. It's not just a given. So not when it's a powerful tool, and we forget that, you know, a phone's gone a long way from when it was, you know, on a cord. And we did used to stretch it around that corner trying to hide from mum and dad as far as we could. Those of you who are old enough to remember a phone on a cord. But it's, you know, it's very different now. And it's important from the beginning to have that computer in a space where you're nearby. And one way you can, with younger kids, you can say, if you have a safe word. So it might be that they're online and they something crops up and they see it and they, you know, call out. It might be just some silly word you've worked out. It might be camel or something like that, you know, whatever. You'll yell at if they call that word, that you know that, okay, I'm going to come over, and you're not going to the worst thing is to go try to discipline a young child is first they're already shocked. Quite often, you know, especially if it's something very confronting, it's probably punishment enough, because we know, you know, innocence is something that is lost so quick, and some things can't be unseen. And, you know, it's really important to say, if you see something, this is what you do. You tell that this is a word, close it down or get up, run away, whatever, and let parent come over and deal with it and close it, and then sit down and have a talk about what it was, and again bring perspective into it. Don't scream, panic and cry if you can help it, because that's not going to help. You know, and this is very general advice, because if a child has been traumatized, you know, you will need to go and seek some potentially some professional advice from a, you know, psychologist, or you know, even go and see a doctor and start there, because, you know, I'm not a psychologist. I am someone who's just observed a lot, and I can give very, you know, general advice. I've got to put that disclaimer in there, because, you know, and every child is an individual, and some children will just go, oh, yep, okay, that's fine, and off they go. And other children, you know, will require quite a bit of help, and maybe just keeping them away from the computer for a while and gently easing them back into what they have, what they can do. But obviously, if you've had that situation, you're going to want to make sure, again, they've got their own login, and that you've limit the access to what programs they have. When it's Google, you can put in the parental settings so that the child can access far less, preferably use the kid YouTube. If they're using YouTube, there is a children's one. Now, it's not perfect. It's had some incidences get through because, you know, I don't know, people are sneaky and they just want to do that. I don't know why. So it's still not, I think sometimes when we put in a lot of parental controls and monitoring devices and things like that, can give a false sense of security. Still don't want them to really come across things before they're ready, if you can help it, you know. If they haven't had any of the talk about birds and bees and, you know, sexuality at all, it can be very confronting for a child to come across pornography, especially as it tends to not be, it's certainly not soft porn that we have anymore, is it? It always seems to be hardcore, because the soft porn's in our almost daily lives now. It's in every other selfie, you know, sadly. So as I said, nothing is prescriptive, but everything has to be looked at, and in terms of the whole family, and getting family buy-in is really important as well. Other members of the family have to be on board, because and neighbours and you know, or, you know, grandparents or whatever. It's like making sure that the same kind of, you know, whatever you've negotiated with your child about what they're allowed to do is met elsewhere where they go, because otherwise, it's really, really hard. And dealing with other parents when your child's having a play date or whatever, having that chat with the parent about, oh, what do you do? And if they go, oh, we just let them do whatever, then you really do have to say, well, look, we don't. And I'd really appreciate that you don't let them online during this play date. And hopefully, most parents would be respectful of another person's request in that way. Yeah.
What was your inspiration now for writing the book? What really led you to say, I need to write a book about this? This is important.
Yeah, I think as I said, the observation I was having was really getting to me. Like, I kept going, there's no guideline. Mm-hmm. And that's where, for this, it was, a guide to the social media playground. But we are all playing in this. We were playing in this new field. I wrote in 2013, so it's been around for a while. I am trying to review it. I've got a copy actually here with like highlights everywhere, because it has got some older stats. But the base of it and the bones of it and the framework work forever. So that part of it really doesn't impact. I do believe I've got a table that might even talk about MySpace, because it went back to like 2012 or something like that in the data. It's like, what, MySpace? Remember that? Some people wish we had it still. But the biggest stem, I think, was a friend's daughter had just gone through university and was looking to become a lawyer, and went for, I think she'd had three interviews for a position as an intern, and was very, very excited. And they'd had a big, end of year breakup party, whatever. And unfortunately, she had got inebriated and fallen over. Someone had taken photos of her with her dress up around her neck, kind of thing. And those photos emerged, and she was interviewed with quite a prestigious firm, and they said, you don't represent our brand. We can't have you. And I thought, wow, that was the first incidents I'd seen where someone was finding issues around, and I started thinking, gee, how does that infect us and our youth as they're being employed? Because as we get older, we're able to cope with different things that happen and we can deal with it, but to have kids being prejudged or having their aspirations altered because of not necessarily something they've done. Again, you've got obviously kids that'll test boundaries and do silly things anyway themselves. And our kind of celebrity culture doesn't help that, because, celebrities being naughty and playing up and doing fun things tends to be something that looks like it might be a good idea when you don't think about the impact. So, being aware of the impact of what happens. And I mean, thank goodness now Facebook has a lot more ability, to get rid of photos that you can get, set your settings so that if you're tagged in something, you can go and look. Like I always say, keep that on. Don't turn off not being notified if someone tags you. You want to know, because that way you're controlling that narrative to some degree. At least you can go and say, look, can you please untag me or remove that image? And if they don't, we now actually do have steps to take that. In Australia, we have the eSafety Commission now, and they actually do have a place where we can go in Australia if there's been images put up that you don't want. If there's, revenge porn is something that unfortunately goes on. So the inappropriate images being shared elsewhere, they actually have, a much more easier process to get those sort of things removed, which when I wrote that book, that wasn't the case at all. It was a nightmare trying to get anything taken down. So
Wow. Has the book led you to speaking engagements or to work with different organizations in this regard?
Yeah, look, I did. I must say, the last few years I've sort of been more because I actually could take the framework into the small business. So I then drifted, and because we have the eSafety Commission, I felt like, well, a lot of the work's done now, so that's been great. But yeah, I have speak at schools to parent groups mostly. I did when we had some really bad fires, not the last lot of fires we had, but the ones before in Tasmania. I actually went down and I did sort of like a tour around Tasmania and gave free talks, and we raised money to rebuild a school as well that had been raised, and that was really good to be able to do that. I've spoken also at mental health. Mental health. This is me morning now. I'm trying to say conference and the word is not coming to my head. I need more coffee. Just one moment. Yeah, so mental health conferences, and also we have a couple of times I've been up to No More Harm, which is an anti-bullying conference that we do. I've spoken there as well. So, yeah, look, it's just our kids are precious and they're our future, and we have to look after them. So, which is where the Future Proof came from, because it was all about giving them tools so that they can go on and conquer the world in the best possible way. As all this stuff comes at, and now we've got AI is going to be the next huge challenge, because it was bad enough someone stuck your head on another body and put that image out there, or took actual images of you. Now they'll be able to take the actual image and make your mouth say things that they never said, and all those sort of manipulations. So I think there's a lot of work to be done in that. Humans have a huge habit of, we get out there and we're all like, hey, let's create this, without looking at what the impact is down the line. And so I tend to think, I think everyone needs to take my 4 R's into the workplace and they need to look at, what you're developing, and put some really strong ethics around the development of that, so that rather than just having, these, it is amazing, the startups and things that are creating AI, but I think we need to, globally, we need to have a lot of ethics around how that is going to develop, and put as much effort and investment into the systems that can help to make sure there's some kind of way of identifying manipulated video in particular, because you could start a war with someone just being stupid, then that's frightening thought. So that's the negative side of it. The good side of AI is that we'll be able to create amazing things that can probably heal and help, with surgeries and stuff like that. Tech for good is a really great thing.
We won't need to interview anybody more, because we can just generate the guests from previous shows.
That's right.
We can. You're reminding me of why it's so important to not react to things we see in social media, not immediately react, and stay there for a moment, think about the possibilities. I mean, I think you said that anything that's put up, has the potential to start a war or anything. And that's a great reminder for us as adults to take a pause. We almost need a time out.
Yeah, I think we do. And when I say and start a war, well, we start mini wars within. I've noticed it hugely. The sensitivity scale is really high. And I'm someone, I do wear my heart on my sleeve, and I will have the harder conversations just to try to, bring balance. And I have just really noticed how ultra sensitive people are. The political climate is one thing. It's either people feel like they have to work on eggshells because I don't dare want to say something in case it upsets somebody else's view. And then at the same time, it's so important that we have open conversations, but we seem to be unable to have rational debate anymore. And the narratives, going around, like, we've got, we are a world where we're able to delve deeper into topics, but we're also able to have, so many different theories thrown out there that it can be twisted way beyond anything until they, are very damaging. And sadly, often they're the things that resonate with somebody, because I feel like, if you're feeling really vulnerable too, it's like, yes, I think that's right, they're doing that. That's what's happening, and the famous they that is never quite explained who they are. But it's really real to a lot of people, and it's very hard to have a discussion that breaks down that narrative because the emotions run so high. But the damage that can be done to our democracies through manipulation, sadly, that's the kind of oxymoron that goes with a lot of the narratives that are online at the moment, is that I think it's kind of built in that thing that you may actually be feeding the very beast that you think you're fighting. And that is really unfortunate and very tricky. And I think it's a good thing if they can pull politics out of social media for a while. That would be great. And then, of course, you got people saying, well, that's impacting our freedoms. But, unfortunately, humans are a pretty unruly lot. And there are some times that maybe that you need to go to a different forum to have those discussions and not have it where it's a free for all. And that's social media has aspects of becoming a free for all.
Yeah.
And it's not balanced, and you need to have that balance. So, and I think that's it. It's just something we all have to work on. And it's like you say, taking that breather. I always say that, like, if you're upset, it's like writing, like when you used to write a letter and, you'd write something down. It's like you're not actually ever going to send that letter. It just let you get what you wanted to say off your chest. I always say go and type it on a list. Don't type it in the comment, because, you can accidentally hit send when you didn't mean to. So if something's upset you online, you've really got to step away and go, okay, let's think about it. And then go back, and either, if it's something that you really do want to debate the thing, then put your logical argument down there, but don't jump in with the, swear words and insults and all those sort of things, because it's just not healthy for all of us, really, to have that. It's not healthy for you doing it if it's, if you're upset, because instead of it being the release at once, writing it on a piece of paper going, really wished I'd said that. I'm glad I said that on the paper. Glad I didn't say it to them. Rip it up, put it in the bin. You can't do that online. And that's one of the other things that we have to be mindful, especially with our kids who can use the online environment like a diary or a journal.
Yeah.
And diaries and journals are brilliant, and I think they're great for mental health because they let you explore and say, but you want to write it in an actual journal, like private, the old way, in your drawer, a pen and paper, and encourage your kids to do it that way, because that's healthy, unpacking stuff. You can write, I hate mum when you've had an upset, but that's fine, because that's what we do. We have upsets and we say that, but we don't really hate anybody. Once they've written it, it kind of dissolves it. Whereas put it out online, and even if you're a strong parent and can go, oh, wish that hadn't happened, the chances are that somebody else will bulk onto it. And then it could be another parent go, oh my God, did you see so-and-so's child did this? And then the whole wheels start in this really negative way that we want to avoid at all costs. So things get blown out of proportion. It's like social media, for the benefits that it has for putting out good on steroids, you can really magnify the message for sure. It can work the negative side as well. So, and we all know that people will share that negative story so much quicker than they share the feel-good story.
Yeah. So I have another one of these general questions that I know you love, but Would you say safety-wise, like what social media networks do you think have the biggest problem, and what like other environments like games and other things do parents maybe need to keep an eye on that they aren't? So I know a lot of games have in-app chat and all the rest of it. So I mean, I'm not sure many kids are on LinkedIn, but I'm not sure necessarily would be the worst platform for them to be on. Like TikTok, where obviously there's a big problem at the moment with TikTok with various images coming on.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah,
the social media thing by risk. What networks most worry you, and which are probably the safest?
Look, the thing, there's positives and negatives about everything, and I hate going in negatives, but it's not the platform, it's the humans. So that's the thing is, so if we got humans on anything, then there's a risk factor comes into it, and the fact that things have become manipulated by there are bored hackers out there that you just want to start something for fun. There are quite often bullies are people that are actually in a lot of pain themselves, and so I think it's coming in with the tools, because the tools will work for any platform if you know what to do and how to respond and how to back off. Definitely anywhere where there is the ability to converse with a stranger, particularly that often happens in your chat rooms, in your gaming rooms, things like that. It's important to have conversations with your kids about that, and then about them being comfortable to come to you, or to have a person that they will go to say something is going on, because we have seen incidents where kids have rocked up to someone's house wanting to beat them up, or have beaten them up and things like that, because they were in a group gaming session and they lost the battle or whatever, and it's completely out of proportion. So there's a bunch of issues there, because the kids that are feeling that anger so bad coming from a game are already probably playing too much. There is an article, I don't often blog actually lately, on Future Proof Your Kids on that site, just because I turned off part of that at the moment. But I did do a bit of a talk about values and gaming, actually. So that's there to have a read if you want later on. But one of the things I've found is that as long as you have respect at the heart of everything you do, then you're unlikely to get into those problems, because you're going to know if something's going off, the skill, turn off, don't engage, walk away. Kids have got to be taught, and adults, that it's not wrong to turn somebody off. It's like Facebook gives you ability to make someone quiet for just a month rather than defriend them, kind of thing. So there's all those different options that you can do. I think the worst thing people do, particularly, and you see even adult celebrities have done this a lot, is if there's been a lot of nasty vitriol hit at them, that they actually go and keep reading it. And, it's led to some really tragic cases and suicides and things like that, they needed to have tools that let them turn that off straight away. And it's really important, no matter who you are, that you have someone that you feel you can go to and say, hey, I don't know how to deal with that. And, whether that's reaching out to a person like me, or preferably you have somebody in your close circle that you can go to, that allows you to have those conversations. But with your kids, start off as young as you can. Make rules with them around how much and what you allow them to do online. I don't think it's prescriptive now about so much, especially with COVID, about how much actual hours that we spend. It's what you don't achieve if you're online. So if you have a child, for example, who's glued to the computer most of the time and they are missing basic things like toileting, eating, showering, having any outdoor time, then there's a problem happening. So it's about not so much sitting there going, all right, you've had your hour, but looking at the whole bigger picture and saying, okay, what are you missing out on? What's not happening that you need to have in your life to have a balanced, healthy life? And that's when you need to be able to negotiate, okay, well, let's cut down some of this time that you're on there. And again, every kid's individual too. Some kids can deal with a lot of screen time, and other kids it's just going to just upsets their sleep patterns and does a whole lot of other things to them. So as a parent, you are the best position to know what your child is like, but we do have to be strong for them, and we do have to do the hard conversations sometimes. And yeah, sadly, parenting didn't come with a handbook, did it?
Well,
it gets more challenging. Yeah,
especially this whole gaming thing, which is somewhat new. I like that you touched on the gaming because, well, one, that's a very valuable conversation to have, and it's so relevant right now. I have 3 boys, all of who would consider themselves gamers.
Right. Yeah.
So I definitely want to go back and read the blog post that you wrote. I'm wondering if you could put it in the comments after the show.
Yeah.
Or now.
Yeah.
But
yeah. I don't think I can do comments for you.
Yeah,
it's
a conversation I'm having with a lot of parents, and it's something I need to read personally as well as a parent.
Yeah. So look, with gaming, that particular post is about values and the potential effect on them. And it's fairly broad, but you can talk about all different aspects. There is, and I do mention in there, there's positive things that can come from gaming as well, and there's people making careers out of it and making, it makes more money than the Super Bowl or something. I think some of the competitions they have. So, there's actually some incredible skills, but that can be had because you've got to learn things like negotiation, collaboration, the ability to make compromises if you're working as a team. So there's some really positive stuff in gaming, but the other side is that balance of time. It is if the game allows chat or microphones and things like that, grooming does happen. So making sure that you've spoken and to your kids and usually they'll think, oh yeah, but I'm only talking to, it's another kid, but it may not be. It may well be an adult male or female who is, looking to do things that, we don't want to even consider our children might be exposed to. So, it's really important that that they have tools to help them suss out. And if someone starts asking them private information, not to give it up, not to tell them where you live, not to tell them anything like that. If you don't know the person like face to face physically, you've never met them, then don't give up that sort of information. Don't even tell them the name of your dog, really, because all those things can then be used. And it's one thing that they might be talking to somebody and give up that information. That person then creates another persona and they come in now armed with more information. So and that is quite scary. Look, it is there's a billion tons of good out there, and it's really important to remember that for all these negative things is the things we don't talk about, which is the positive relationships that are made, the ability to keep in touch. Like COVID has again highlighted not only issues that we've got, like the negative side is the lack of resilience and stuff, but it's also enabled us to keep having these conversations, and it's brought more people aware that that's there. And I think I know I've got an elderly uncle, and when he did a Zoom with her, he was just blown away, because he's isolated, and we got him set up. It can be a challenge too for older people to get that set up. There's no one there to do it for them and that sort of thing. But just to like he said to me, he goes, it's just like we're all here, isn't it? you know, and he was just so excited and delighted. He just turned 90, so it was quite. So, you know, I like to always bring back and remember those positives because, you know, the fact that we can meet and we're in, you know, 3 different countries, able to have really great conversations. That's one of the best things that you can do. And so even in when it comes to the gaming, there are great conversations that kids can be having in there, but you also just got to be really aware of where it goes and probably keep it to the game. It's the safest way to go if they are playing against strangers. Yeah, so depends what game they're playing, I guess, too. But there's so many different aspects. But remembering the positive skills that can come out of those games too is a good thing to do. And talk about your kids with, like, you know, how are you strategizing in this game? Get involved a bit. That's really important, especially with the younger ones, to actually, you know, be there and understand. And that way you get a better feeling of yourself, like, oh, I don't know if I like this or not. And then with your older ones, you know, it can give you a sense of comfort, actually, if you're having that conversation and you go, oh, isn't that like this? And they'll go, oh, no, Mum, it's blah, blah, you know, and all of a sudden you go, oh, yeah, I guess, remember when I was a kid? Yeah, it would have been water off my back too, you know. So because we come in with this wanting to protect. Yeah. So we have to remember that we're also allowing them to grow and to prosper and to, you know, develop. So again, you know, so it is a balancing act the whole time. But yeah, for the most part, go into everything thinking good, but arm them as much as you can with some strategies to help them if things go pear-shaped. Yeah.
Oh, I love that. I love that. And I love that you pointed out we're able to have this conversation right now, UK, Australia, and US. And that's exactly what's happening in gaming. Their teams are around the world.
That's right. Yeah. And they can be all different ages. Like they can be playing, you know, depending on what the game is, they can be, you know, 14-year-olds, 50-year-olds, you know, 35-year-olds. And that's where the slight risk, often most of the time they're just absolutely people that just love playing the games and they're full on into it. But just again, that awareness that it can happen, and just those things like, hey, you know, just say to your child, if someone starts asking you like really personal stuff, just remember this is your gaming environment, and keep that till if you ever go to a live gaming event and you meet that person and you've met them, and you can judge then who they are rather than, you know, and how you feel about them. Don't take it. It's how you see people get, you know, ripped off in online relationships. That's another area where, you know, people have been hurt because they actually have never met somebody, and you know, lonely hearts can give up a lot more than they really intend to and end up, you know, hurt. You know, you hear so many tragic stories of people, you know, traveling overseas thinking they've met the love of their life, only to find out that that person's not even there and they just got whatever money they could and ran. And that's really sad, because the other flip side of that is people meet online and, you know, end up, you know, married and happy ever after kind of stuff. So, you know, it's just always being aware, but having that awareness, if someone keeps wanting to take or grab information from you, then there's something not quite right about it. So, yeah, I think if we can just give our kids a little bit of advice around those sort of things that keep them aware, so that they know the difference. And if a conversation does start getting friendlier, to say, just come chat to me about it. Let me sit down with you and see how this chat's going, because as an adult, you'll be able to read sort of more between the lines if that person is making suggestions, you know, that might be being a bit more, or adding. The usual thing is to add a lot of compliments. You know, that's how a lot of things start. Just so many compliments that will be added in about how great they are at doing this and that. And, you know, as an adult, you'd look at it and go, yeah, that doesn't look right. But as a kid, they're like going, yeah, wow, because it feeds the ego.
So we've talked a load about online safety. I'm going to ask you an Australia question. I'm not testing you about Australia, don't worry about that. But how would you say social media is different in Australia to, say, the US and the UK? Are there any differences in the way that people use social media, or and yeah, I suppose that's the question. I haven't got a second part. I just decided to ask you that part.
Well, yeah, it's hard to know. I've been to every country, and I suppose the restrictions in different countries obviously make things, different. For example, China doesn't have Facebook and that kind of thing. Here, I think pretty much we use it the same as everywhere else. I think maybe business here has been a little bit slower to pick up on the value of social media on that side. Compared to some other countries, I think we're just sort of getting there. And actually, again, COVID's kind of woken up a lot of organisations to going, oh, actually, maybe we should have had a bit more of a presence, because all of a sudden we're having to madly do it now, So I think, perhaps we'd been a little bit slower there. I can't really speak for the UK because I haven't done that much there, but I think the US tends to sort of, lead with a lot of these things, and they're often developed in the US. So, they're obviously coming out first out of the gate. Australians can be a little bit more conservative, actually, but then also very laid back. So it's not always the best the best equation, I suppose. But yeah, I think we pretty much are using it the same. Kids are very savvy, for example. I don't think there's a lot of difference there. The biggest difference you find is more around opportunity and circumstance. So, of course, you will have demographics where the kids just don't have access to, the same equipment and things like that. So there you might find that they don't, when they're confronted with it, they don't actually know how to use it as well as our kids that are far more savvy. But savvy doesn't necessarily mean smart either. So you can get around a program, you can understand it and think you know everything. But if you are not, if you haven't developed those tools, again, around the, resilience and life experience, it lets you understand a little bit more deeper about what it is that you're doing, then it's harder to, the perspective of a child is, no matter how clever you think they are with online, is still restricted to, their stage of development, really. So we have to be careful not to go, oh, they're so great at it, I don't have to do anything. They'll just set it all up and blah, blah, which is great because you send them in and they will set up grandma's computer for them and that sort of stuff. But you also have to remember that they don't have that life experience to necessarily be able to determine that or make the smartest choices online, especially when hormones and things come into the picture. And, where as kids grow, they'll have different challenges on them that way, and they just tend to think, especially adolescent, there's that whole point where it comes more and more about them right now, and they're developing such a sense of self that which is normal and natural, but it means that they don't necessarily have the vision to look at a consequence ahead. So we really have to still be there to guide them. It doesn't mean you have to be crazy tech savvy yourself. You just have to be human savvy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're just tools after all.
Yeah, absolutely. Tim, I have one last question second to last question.
You're allowed.
I was waiting to see if you had a follow-up. I want to talk about one more thing. We're running to the end of the show, but I'm really inspired by the fact that you mentor young entrepreneurs, and I think that might inspire something good worldwide. And I know you talked briefly about that, but can you talk a tiny bit more about?
Yeah, sure. Well, I'm just privileged that I get to be able to do that. The program here is, and I know they've gone around Australia a bit, and I think the UK had something similar. And you actually will find there are probably programs, that are similar around the world in different, maybe built slightly differently. But here it's Upstart Challenge. And that was set up by a couple of lovely ladies who really wanted to help unpack all the amazing imagination and abilities that our kids have to explore, just see what can they do, what if you give them tools and imagination and a platform, what can you invent? So they don't have to actually make a like the full product, but they make a prototype that might be made of cardboard, or it might be drawings, or it might be whatever, but they have to sell that idea through. And so they have different schools schools put in a team, and the kids have to come up with their own idea, and they tend to work in teams, but some do it on their own, and they'll flesh out an idea, and we have some really great, fabulous people that come in to work with them. And I just get a real kick out of being able to, sit down and just, listen to their ideas, and we just give them a little bit of guidance along the way. But you really don't want to, we have to be very careful that we are just mentoring and that you don't put your own thoughts too much, but you can open up, because, sometimes they haven't thought of enough questions and things like that to answer. So they've had a mental health app developed. They had often they stem from some personal experience. Like there was a young man, diabetic, who wanted to develop a new way of for the insulin pump to work. There's been an emergency one, another one. His father needed to have CPR, and they didn't have the paddle machine thing available there, and he made an app that now has got people can go on that and you can find out where the nearest one is and things like that. So there's just lots and lots of different ideas, and you get others. Another one had a drone delivery system that he came up with, and just incredible ideas that they have. They all have to have a purpose, that they bring something positive into the world. So they're not just a pure profit thing or anything like that, but it's got to be something that is viable. And they'll go through stages of, I have a big pitch fest, and then a selection of kids will go in through to the finals, and then those kids will then present on stage their idea. They have a panel of judges, and which includes the potential investors, and somebody at the end of it will get, usually there's like a $10,000 like startup money that is given just to start unpacking that idea further. And there's some boys that did a really great, they were doing some recycled clothing thing, and they had an online store.
I love that.
That was just going really, really well. So it's just amazing what kids will come up with, and especially with the challenge, like they have a speaker that comes in, and he's just brilliant. And I told you, I'm bad at names, especially early in the morning, and I can't think of his name right now, but he's a wonderful man, and he comes in and he gives the kids a challenge, and it'll be like, you've got this bottle and you've got to do something or other with it, and then everyone has to really get down and hone into the idea of how you might solve a problem with very little tools, and then split you up and give you different scenarios, and you have to work through those. And it's really great just watching the ideas start coming, and then watching that formulate right through the process is just brilliant, because it'll start off with a really messy idea. And then as they go through, and you have to teach them. I think one of the things, the hardest thing, and it's hard for all of us, is when you have to try to get them to understand they need to drop an aspect of something because it's the thing that, and often it might be, oh, but I love that. I don't want to drop that, because how we fall in love with our own ideas. Yeah. It's really fulfilling. I really enjoy having that opportunity. So I love doing that, but it's just something I volunteer to do on the side. So yeah,
I love that. I love mentoring the next generation. It's absolutely brilliant. Yeah, Fiona, thank you for being here. This was absolutely fabulous.
Oh, thanks for having me. I was really excited. I mean, I get to see Tim again.
Yeah, I saw Fiona. It's kind of like I went to look at her in a cage, but no. I met Fiona at Social Media Marketing World.
Yes.
Ironically, Christelle lives in San Diego, but's never been to Social Media Marketing.
Well, if I ever can get back there again, which I hope.
Well, yeah. I mean, hopefully it will happen next year sometime.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if they're going to let us fly out for some time. That's my biggest thing. And I think unless they move it.
You better start walking then.
Start rowing my boat.
Get the train across to Darwin and then get a ferry to Singapore or something and then start. You could do a world tour.
If I wanted to go, I think it's still quicker to go like maybe New Zealand and then straight up. Darwin, I wouldn't go to Darwin to get to the US. No, not from where I live. Because I'm on the East Coast, so I just kind of go straight up in a line.
Yeah,
like this. Just for 10 hours or something.
Anyway, it was great to have you on the show. We've gone slightly over, but it's hopefully woken you up a little bit. And
yeah.
Absolutely. One last question before we go. Where can we find you, Fiona? Where can our audience find you?
So I Respect Online is where I generally hang out, which is more to do, the business side and adult side of stuff. But Future Proof Your Kids is also a page that's there. But most of the time, it's if you're looking for me, I Respect Online on Twitter, I Respect Online on Instagram, Facebook, and under Fiona Lucas on LinkedIn.
Fabulous. Thank you. Thank you, Tim, and our friends who tuned in both now and friends who are coming after. Have a great day. Have a great rest of the week.
So much. Okay, see ya.
This is terrifying for me.
I've made more money in the last 3 years than I did in the previous 7.
It's just cliche shit,